We're exploring old worlds. All this and more coming up on This Week in Retro.
High-resolution color graphics.
This land of high technology.
The revolution in technology that made the information age possible.
Those kids are not afraid of computers.
Britannia Is Saved? Ultima goes back to Lord British, maybe?
New IDEs for Old Machines, a look at 2 newly announced coding environments for Amiga, Atari ST, Commodore 64 Ultimate, and more.
Real or sim? We look at comparisons between the real world and things in games.
And a new malware threat for retro seekers, along with, yes, they'll be talking about the Commodore phone, coming up on this week's show for the week of Saturday, the 27th of June, 2026.
Up-to-date news for out-of-date tech.
Hello and welcome to another show. I'm Dave. Chris will be telling you something about someone's birthday soon. And also with us is Jason.
Also too.
Shall I do the birthday thing now? Apparently,
well.
I tell you what. I'll tell you why I put this at the top of the notes, because we always miss important birthdays. And so on the day of recording, according to my sources, although it was Facebook, so maybe it was actually yesterday and I thought it was today. But anyway, happy 30th birthday, Quake. There you go.
Yeah, what a game. 30 years ago. I saw it today as well, and I meant to put something in the show notes, and I didn't, which shows you how useless I am. But you did, Chris. Well done, Chris.
Hey.
This is the first time in ages we've got no guests, and all three of us are here. So we're going to have a normal show today. There is lots to discuss. This Commodore phone will come up, and I think we'll get it done and out of the way. We'll slam dunk it and put it out of the way and then not talk about it ever again. Maybe. We'll see. But there is lots to cover, so we'll get stuck into it. Back in the distant past, long before computer games were an industry, in fact, before home computer games were even much of a business, a teenager was making games. In fact, he started when he was barely a teenager on a teletype terminal, which is a computer without a screen. He'd been inspired by the new phenomenon in 1974, spreading through basements and dorm rooms, Dungeons and Dragons. The young man would work on his own games, iterating on the same basic formula, trying to create a game to simulate a D&D adventure. In fact, he called these games by the same 3 letters, D&D. He made 28 iterations of them over the years before he took a job in Computerland in Texas and saw an Apple II. And he got his dad, an astronaut, I mean, whose dad isn't an astronaut, to buy it for him. Later that year, he self-published his own game, selling it in Ziploc bags in computer shops, and then in 1980 it was commercially published. I'll set Jason up for something later on. The first box game, Jason? That game...
No, for podcast listeners, the answer to that is no.
No. That game was a mix of Middle-earth and D&D, and it was called Akalabeth World of Doom. And by today's standards, an incredibly basic game, and not the first boxed game. Temple of Apshai, and before that, Beneath Apple Manor were commercial releases in boxes. But he was certainly in there right at the start. Now, I'm talking about Richard Garriott, also known as Lord British, and while Akalabeth isn't an Ultima game, it's often called Ultima Zero because it fits the series, and you can see it was part of the path he was following. He would go on to make the Ultima series, and while it is old now, and many RPGs have stood on its shoulders, at the time that Ultima was coming out, it was the cutting edge of gaming. It was always pushing what could be done. It was creating worlds. In fact, the slogan for Richard's game company, Origin, was, "We create worlds." And it was populating with characters that came back throughout the series, always giving us a world to explore that with each iteration became more compelling. And it's not just RPGs that owe a lot to Ultima. It's nearly every game now. You can go back to Ultima Underworld and see its influence, for example, directly influenced Doom. And then you can see it in games like Fallout and the later Fallout games and the Elder Scrolls series. They are coming from that point. Then modern gaming has RPG elements everywhere. Japanese RPGs, that's where their roots came from. Japanese spin on the Western games of the time. Ultimately, though, Ultima failed. Ultima 9 was a flop, and the complexity and cost of game making seemed to be beyond Richard. It got too much for him, and you could see that happening through Ultima 6, 7, 8, and then 9. He did sell out to EA, and that wasn't a happy relationship. As much as I admire him, it was at least partly down to him. I've watched interviews with Trip Hawkins and with Richard Garriott, and I think they're both perhaps more willing to admit that it wasn't entirely the other party at fault. I still admire him. And when Ultima is gone, mainstream role-playing games took over, and they clearly owe the legacy to Ultima. But today's story, though, is that it looks like he's maybe finally going to get the rights to his own series back from Elizabeth and Abraham at EA. He's maybe going to finally defeat the dreaded pirate Hawkins. And from Ultima 6 onwards, there are some very unsubtle and critical references to EA and Trip Hawkins. Now, we don't know if it's certain, and I don't know exactly how it works, what he's trying to do. And I don't think, from what I understand, I don't think it means he could just start making his own Ultima or reissue the old games or have all the rights to them. I don't think it works like that. My first role-playing game, though, was Bard's Tale on the CPC, because Ultima didn't exist on the Amstrad. And when I got my ST, it was Dungeon Master that I wanted to play. But when I got Ultima 4, I fell in love with RPGs, and that's been me ever since. I love exploring worlds, and that's why I like these. That's why my game playing tends to be in role-playing games, point-and-click adventures, text adventures, MUDs. I love exploring worlds, and that's what pulled me in with Ultima. So guys, maybe putting Ultima to one side, especially for you, Chris. What worlds have you visited in games and enjoyed the most?
Yeah, that's quite an easy one to answer. No, they're not role-playing games for sure for me, but Halo, the first look up at the sky to see the ring rising upwards and almost impossibly high and out of view, it was just breathtaking, and it was so unique, such a unique concept in gaming worlds, and it felt so open, even though it wasn't. It was fairly linear, to be honest. And BioShock Rapture, probably for similar reasons, even though it's completely different. It's the underwater city. It was completely stunning. And it was, again, really a unique concept, hadn't really been done before. But actually, it was the third one in the trilogy, which is BioShock Infinite, where you're set up among the clouds in the floating city of Columbia. And I think perhaps it's because I played all three in quick succession. Maybe it's because it's so opposite to what you've been going through in the first two of the series that it just takes your breath away. It's just absolutely stunning. And in the most recent one, which is a game I mentioned the other week, Blueprints. So it's a adventure game, puzzle game, where you're in this mansion and estate, but every single room changes with the refresh of each day, and so it's a fresh discovery. And every day in game day just felt like a special place. And because I was playing through it with Luke, I'll come home from work and we would instantly both run to his PC and continue the game. And I've not had that experience for a long time, where my waking hours are spent just waiting for the next play session so we can see how much further we can go. Fantastic.
Jason, I think you've got some experience with Ultima. Would you like to go back?
Well, if this were to happen, if Richard Garriott were to get whatever it is he's trying to get, and I'd be interested if you want to talk about this mechanism and how we found out about it, I'd be interested in talking about that a little bit. But if he were to get it, honestly, I would be interested to see, rather than be working under the pressure of, what would an Ultima 10 mean to people? What if he was able to go back to the freewheeling days of, the first couple of games where you had lasers and you went to space? And, it was more of a, what do I just want to put in a game that I want to sell to people, rather than living under the pressure of what does Ultima mean to people and how do I satisfy that? So if it were to happen, I would be more interested to see just obviously he's been through a lot of life since he was first creating Akalabeth and Ultima 1, but there may still be that kind of, what would that creative frenzy look like as an older man, as somebody with more life experience? But what would that be if he wasn't really bound by anything?
Yeah, I think him trying to take on Ultima 10 would be a less than brilliant idea, and I don't think it would maybe do what it's needed to do. I'm interested, though, in the mechanism, though, and I think you know more about it than I do. I just saw there's a possibility of this, and I thought, I'm not going to look into it, because just he might not. That's enough for me.
Well, so the story was submitted to us by Spud by Night, and it's citing a PC Gamer article, and then there was but that is itself is citing a video from, oh gosh, I had it in front of me, and now it's vanished again. Inside Games, it claimed that they talked to Garriott about this. The mechanism is, and if I knew about this at any point, I had completely forgotten. But if you are the creator or the heirs of a creator of a copyrighted work, that was not a work for hire, and that may be an important detail in here. But there is a provision in U.S. copyright law that you can pull that copyright back from the entity that you assigned it to 35 years after that assignment has been made, which is why Garriott's saying, well, I sold Origin to EA in 1992, so we're coming up on 35 years. And wild if true, like if this actually, I mean, it is something that has been used with music. I have not been able to find an instance where it was done with software. And, you know, EA is a super big international conglomerate. Garriott's got a few nickels to rub together too, but this feels like an interesting test of intellectual property rights. Dave, as you did allude to earlier, Richard Garriott says a lot of things, and Richard Garriott has been saying for many years that Ultima, or I think the Inside Games guys quoted as Ultima 2, that was the first boxed computer game. That is absolutely not true. Garriott may believe that that's true. He may believe in his heart that may be how he remembers it. It's not true. Yeah. So just because he says he can do this, I did just a quick, bouncing around, and just, game title screens are not proof of anything in particular, but the last edition of Ultima that is solely copyright Lord British is 5. Ultima 2 was jointly copyrighted to Sierra, and that's a whole other sidebar that you can have specialty videos on. After that, it's British and Origin, or just Origin. So what would he get? He wouldn't get the trademarks. Would he get his original Apple II code that he'd have to, anonymize or whatever? And is that enough to do anything that he couldn't do anyway? I don't know the answer to any of those questions. It would be interesting to watch, but there's historical precedent to say that just because Richard Garriott says a thing does not mean that is the thing that is. So,
I mean, I think even if you discount the things he says that aren't quite true about he was there in 1974, starting making these games. He did Ultima Zero at Akalabeth in 1979 in game shops, and in box in 1980. Not the first, but certainly in there before anyone else was doing it in a big commercial way. So no need to exaggerate what he's done there, Richard. It is good enough on its own. It's many years since I played a new Ultima game, and at the time they were groundbreaking games. And I would love to one day step back into the Moongate and go to Britannia for one more time with a AAA adventure. But I think it would have to happen probably through EA selling the rights to someone like Owlcat or someone to create a game within the Ultima world, maybe retell the Ultima 4 story and build it into 5 and 6 at the same time. I don't know. But something might happen that way. So best of luck to Lord British. I hope you can do something with it. Shroud of the Avatar was not very good, and I hope that wasn't the last thing we get from you.
Our guest last week, Tony Smales, talked about how he learned to program by coding directly into memory. No fancy high-level languages or even a machine language assembler, just handcrafted byte after byte after byte. Now, this wasn't terribly uncommon, especially not for smaller projects or machines with built-in monitors like the Apple II. I don't know Richard Garriott's origin story on this, but it's very possible that's how he started out. And it remained a valid, if uncomfortable, way to program well into the 16-bit era. But we have modern conveniences for a reason, and 2 developers are stepping up to make life easier for themselves and others targeting older machines, as well as one neo-retro design. In the latter case, Senior by 445 let us know that the Polish developer Tomasz Karian-Mielnik has announced the C64 Ultimate Game Engine, which, as far as a product name telling you exactly what it is and what it does, is unimpeachable. There's a brief video that shows off the concept. He is quick to explain that it is, quote, a collection of proof of concepts, technical experiments, ideas, and lots of fun, unquote. Now, like a lot of these modern development suites, the designer here has his own end project in mind, which he describes as a C64 Metroidvania, where, quote, everything should be multicolored bitmaps, full of animations, large bosses, and running smoothly every frame, unquote. Now, although the Commodore 64 Ultimate is designed to be an accurate reproduction of Commodore 64 hardware, it does have a few advantages that few, if any, real machines in the wild actually have. One that most people know about is the ability to use multiple SID chips for sound. In theory, any C64 can do this, but at a minimum, you have to install an external cartridge to do that, whereas the C64 Ultimate has this capability out of the box. It can emulate two, there's sockets for more. It's very easy to configure a multi-SID setup in an Ultimate. The other is a 16 megabyte RAM expansion unit, which is, again, totally plausible on any real 64, but in practice is not terribly common. The 16 meg models only came out relatively recently in life, so if you have even a vintage REU, you're not going to have that much storage, whereas in the Ultimate, it's just built in. And the thing that the Ultimate has going for it, which you really cannot find anywhere else in the Commodore 64 ecosystem, is the ability to run the system at up to 64 megahertz and have it remain basically stable. C64, of course, shipped at 1 megahertz, and most real-world C64 accelerators that have come out over the past 35 plus years, they've ranged anywhere between 4 to 18 megahertz in real-world operation, depending on the approach they took, and none of them are as compatible as the Ultimate's turbo mode. So on other platforms that have this kind of next generation, neo-retro model, it seems to be settled science. Like, I have not seen people throw fits about people developing something that's only for the Spectrum Next hardware. That must be nice for people who actually have their Spectrum Next that they paid for. Do you guys think that this might be different if we get a wave of C64 Ultimate games coming out?
I don't know. I should say in the Spectrum Next, an update came out by email just before we went into recording, which said there'll be a production update next week. So hopefully it's weeks away. Hopefully. Maybe, we'll see. The initial first two batches of Spectrum Next did not cause a tsunami of new development, but I'm still hoping that the third one will, because an awful lot more machines out there. And the C64U must be getting up there in numbers. I don't know how many Gideon sold before we went to the Perifractix Commodore. Presumably less than what Commodore have done, because Commodore brought the price down and made it easy. But there are a lot of them out there, so I hope it happens. I don't know much about the programming side, so I don't know how easy it would be to develop for, let's say, the Spectrum Next and the C64U at the same time. I don't know if there's an easy way to do that and say, look, we're targeting these kind of machines so that there's a larger user base for the games. But I hope it happens.
Be like the good old days of Spectrum versus Commodore all over again. No, I think they should, especially because you've got the dual SID, and because that can do stereo then, can't it? So games where you have the split sound and everything, why wouldn't you? So yeah, I think it'd be a great thing if they do.
There is a full list of features in this development suite, but honestly, watching the video is probably a more effective way to show off what Garriott is going for. There's a constantly gyrating background, very smooth, very colorful display, to say nothing of the heavy use of digitized sounds, which is another reason to use that second SID, is you can just push. In this case, he's pushing 2 megabit sampled audio stream through it, and using up that much of a 16-bit RAM expansion is not a huge sacrifice for what he's trying to do. The system says that it'll support 16 virtual sprites, interactive objects, simple event handlers, very large objects and bosses with no practical size limits other than the C64's resolution, and smooth operation at 50 frames per second. PAL only for now, he says, which I and all the other Americans and Canadians say boo. Notably, there is no mention currently on the landing page of just how many platforms this engine and all its tools will work on. I actually couldn't find a definite indication of what it's running on now at all. The other project for developers out there, which was submitted by Fisket, is called Macumba Editor, and that comes from Jose Francisco Pancho Manera of Argentina. Now, like the C64 Ultimate project, this one is also still in development, but unlike that one, there are actually live demo products available. Specifically, he's put out a Meshtastic network chat client and a game launcher front end for Atari ST. Macumba Editor is a cross-platform development environment. It's heavily influenced by the old Borland Delphi system, and it is available, he says, to run on Mac, Linux, Windows, even a browser-based version, apparently, all designed to make it easier to develop cross-platform software for Amiga, 68K Mac, Atari ST, DOS, and even PDP-11.
That doesn't belong there.
Well, that's the author's flourish, I guess. He does say that support is more experimental, but it may actually tie in with some of the, like, this is what this system is for rather than this, which I'll get into in a minute. I know that Delphi has been and remains a popular development environment for a lot of people. I think it's easier to just let Pancho make his case for why his system is like Delphi based in the Pascal language, rather than C or one of the trendier modern languages. To quote him, Macumba script is Pascal light, variables, loops, conditionals, file IO, TCP events. It's widget aware, and the transpiler resolves it to the right label on each platform with the correct redraw underneath. You can pick it up in an afternoon. If you've ever written Pascal, Delphi, or even Amos Blitz Basic back in the 90s, you'll feel right at home, unquote. Now, he is not promising the moon. He's making clear that Macumba editor is more targeted for applications, productivity things where performance is more about functionality and stability than speed. Again, to quote him, it's not the tool to build the Black Lotus level demos, hyper-optimized games, or crack throws with intricate copper lists, unquote. So that may be why PDP-11 is in there, kind of to say, like, sure, if you want to develop a front end for processing files or sharing things out, we can target these different things. It targets Amigas equipped with Kickstart 1.3 or later, STs with TOS 1.04 or above, and Macs with System 6 or 7. The suite comes with integrated emulators for all of the supported platforms, so you can do quick testing, as well as the ability to output ready-to-use disk images for every supported platform. Yes, even PDP-11, which again is listed as experimental. So now that there are these easy-use tools coming for developers on a variety of 16-bit platforms, you guys have anything you want to commission other people to make for you?
My theme for this episode is to ask to be taken to new worlds and let me explore them. So a 16-bit system can do a lot. Not so sure that PDP-11, but all the other systems can do a lot. If you look at the later ST and Amiga RPG games like Ishar and Amber Moon, you could do a huge adventure in there. Or even look at Dungeon Master. There's no reason you couldn't go deeper with that and have several dungeons and all the rest of it. So there is something you can do on there. And I like that not artificial at all. I like the limit that a 16-bit system puts on you, because if you don't have those limits, where do you stop with things? So having to work within that box, it means that you can do it on your own or with a small team, get somebody to help you in music and graphics or something. And we found out that in the UK in particular, when things moved on from 8 to 16-bit and then moved on from 16-bit to others, so many software houses just couldn't manage the situation. They couldn't manage the expansion there, and they folded. Almost all of them died away because of it. So allowing people to stick within that 16-bit box with the help here, or on 8-bit machines with perhaps they don't need as much help here, will allow someone to make a game within these limits that still allows them to explore stuff, but without this, well, I need to do this now, I need to do that now. Put a limit on it so you can get finished.
Given this isn't the tool to give me my OCS targeted version of Outrun, it would seem I'm just going to say deluxe paint, but a version that supports layers. Just simple needs.
Did you guys happen to take a look at the C64 Ultimate proof of concept stuff?
Yeah, because you've got a question about that, haven't you? And I don't have an answer.
Yeah, I mean, do you believe that it is a C64?
I don't know.
Can you believe it?
I don't
Looks
know.
doable.
No.
Oh, there's a lot going on. Yeah, I mean,
there is, in the background especially.
It's got that kind of like, oh, this is a nice looking Genesis game. Oh, it's not a Genesis game. This is on a C64. What? Tell me more. Yeah,
lots of things.
That was kind of my vibe.
Yeah, I'm not sure. But I didn't think about it until you asked that question, and then I looked at it and I thought, I see where he's going. Yeah.
Now, the real test for any development environment like this is whether anybody outside the core designer is going to pick them up and start doing interesting things with them. Over on our Patreon show 260 weeks ago in Retro, we took a look back at the Turbo Rascal syntax error system, which 5 years later is still primarily used by its creator. Often people who can use tools like this are often very particular about what they like and they want, and they end up making their own, which obviously is what's happening here. But if you do see a project out there that's been created in Macumba or in the C64 Ultimate Game Engine, of course, please do post about it on reddit.com/r/thisweekinretro.
Stop Killing Games seems to have come to a conclusion. A great deal of momentum has ended in the EU Parliament without anything really solid happening. I still hope the awareness it's raised will lead to better practices in the gaming world. But remember, it's never been reasonable to demand game producers keep things going forever. But it's also reasonable if you buy a game that you don't lose access to it 6 months later.
And a little catch-up work on our Patreon rolls. A few weeks back, we missed welcoming Steve M. as a new annual member. Thank you very much for your patience. And we also welcome as an annual member Pixel Cool. If you would like to join them, please head over to patreon.com/thisweekinretro, where I assert we will have a new episode of 260 Weeks Ago in Retro soonish.
Soon. Yeah,
Soonish,
definitely
guys?
soon. Sorry, Steve. Enjoy some gratuitous stars around your name as an apology. On to news in brief, and how brief we're going to be here. The Commodore phone, after announcing announcements for nearly a year, as we said last episode when Commodore announced the announcement, Commodore have announced that they're going to be opening up pre-orders for the new phone, the Callback 8020. The phone is a flip phone, that clamshell design that was popular before we all got glass slabs like the iPhone. It doesn't run on Android, it runs on Sailfish, which is a European operating system, very privacy focused and very much not Apple and very much not Google. It can run Android apps through a compatibility layer, but it doesn't have access to the Android App Store, which unfortunately means it can't do secure Android things, so your banking apps probably won't work. You can't do contact lists, you can't do things like tickets and parking all the time. You might struggle with those. And also, by choice, it doesn't have email. That's blocked at a system level. There's also no web browser, again, blocked at system level, but you can turn a web page into an app. The touchscreen is disabled, but you can bypass that for apps, they say. Inside it is a Helio G81, which is what you get in a $100 cheap smartphone, even cheaper on AliExpress. It is a very, very budget CPU. The phone itself is very Commodore in style with LEDs and logos, much more than you can achieve with just a case, so it does look the part. And of course, it's a flip phone, so you don't see that design anymore. Well, unless you've got the glass slab flip phones, which are quite different. And it also has an audiophile DAC. It is not a great phone, in my opinion, because it's relatively expensive and can't do the functions that we need that we're used to in modern life. So you'll need another phone, a proper one, to do things like going anywhere outside the house and paying for things, or getting on the train, public transport, parking apps and all the rest of it, tickets for things and so on. I'm all for Sailfish OS and decoupling from big tech and digital detox, but I don't think this is it. I think this is more like a toy you would have with your existing phone because it can't do what we need. Their price on the site is £450, for me at least. That's with the pre-launch discount already applied, so that's quite expensive. It has gone down really, really badly for the most part, and Commodore have put out a couple of almost combative marketing pieces defending it, and have already increased the launch discount from $50 to $100. So thanks to King of the Potato people for submitting it. What are your thoughts, guys?
I think I just want to say that I'm behind the vision. I get where Perifractic / Christian is coming from in what he would like to achieve with this. The price point is interesting, and I see this as a very Ferrari Luce release, as in this is not what anybody was expecting the brand to come out with next, and therefore it's been quite jarring, I think, for the community, and the product itself is quite polarizing. So I think the market will decide, and it will be interesting to watch. Bobby Prince, the composer, has passed away. Bobby made the music for some of my favorite shooters like Doom, Wolf 3D, and Duke Nukem 3D, and also Rise of the Triads. Thanks again to King of the Potato People for letting us know.
Pacheco6502 let us know that a lost Sega Rally game for Nintendo DS has been found after 20 years.
Rich Neptune has started a discussion on computer fairs. There's lots of people in this discussion talking about it. And if you ask me, these were kind of like eBay before eBay. Lots of people selling very, very cheap, much many bargain stuff. The cheapest modems you could get and all the rest of it. So quite interesting, these things that we've forgotten about.
Command & Conquer is finally getting a port to the best 16-bit system, the Atari ST. I did not write that in the notes. Anyway, Dave.
You've got a Beast instead then, if it makes you happy.
Yeah, I could have Beast. The Beast of... No, that doesn't work either. Anyway, so yes, the ST is getting a port. This is a port of the DOS version and requires an accelerated STE or Falcon. But in future, a Mega STE will be able to run it as well. Thanks, Squelch411. And
Dr. Local linked us to a Malwarebytes article about GitHub malware. that is targeting retro gamers. There are some projects out there that claim to be designed to help you access your data or get ROM images, and they are actually Trojans.
Yeah, and I should point out that a friend of the channel, Lee from More Fun Making It, More Fun Fixing It, has been the subject of some kind of malware and has had his Discord completely deleted beyond restoration and has to start again with his new Discord. So that's unfortunate. Be careful, use two-factor authentication when you can. There's lots more in the subreddit. If you'd like to submit an article there, if you'd like to go and upvote and downvote things, then go to reddit.com/r/thisweekinretro and have a read.
Please do not adjust your set. This is about tech and gaming. It just sometimes sounds like I'm talking about cars. You are on the right podcast. I repeat, you are on the right podcast. For decades now, if I happen to catch a glimpse of a Formula One race on the telly, I could look for a couple of moments and tell you which track it was. Not because I'm a huge F1 nut, I'm really not, but because certain tracks are ingrained in my memory. Why? Well, because I've driven them. I feel like I've been there, even though I never have. Monza is the easiest one for me to spot, with its chicane not long after the opening straight, soon dropping away into long straights and sweeping high-speed corners. Monaco is very iconic, spiralling through streets because it's a street circuit, through the tunnel and past the elegant marina. The odd thing is, though, this recognition doesn't come from the photorealistic graphics of things like Project Cars, Forza, Gran Turismo. It was the flat shade polygons of Jeff Cramman's Formula One Grand Prix on the Amiga. That, through repetition after hours of gameplay, etched every twist and turn into my long-term memory. Facebook page Race Sim Central has put up a comparison video shared with us by Gunnar Warhorse. In the main view, the footage is from the game, F1 Grand Prix by Jeff Cramman, blasting around Monza. And in the top left corner, footage of the late great Ayrton Senna on the same circuit. Now, they've slowed the dash cam footage from Senna's car down just a little bit to match the speed the game is running at on the same lap, but no other tricks have been used. And it really clearly shows how accurate the track recreation is. And of course, being Senna, it's from the same period that the game came out as well, which is important because obviously tracks evolve over time. There's another one from the same Facebook page, but this time showing the game Revs from the 8-bit era. In fact, I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure this one was running on the BBC Model B or the BBC Micro. It's a 1985 racing game, also by Cramman. And again, in the footage, you can see the game in the main view and the real-life track footage in the picture-in-picture. And it's stunning how even on that game, a very old game, the important details are accurate. So, while Dave, in your story, we've talked about how virtual worlds have taken us into wonderful places away from reality, here what we're really looking at is how they can also recreate places and experiences from the real world. I've driven a real-world racetrack that I first drove in a game, so that was Wanneroo Raceway. That was featured in the Codemasters Xbox game V8 Supercars 2 Race Driver. That track is here in Perth, and I've driven the short version of the track in go-karts, and the long version of the track, which is the V8 Supercars version, in my Porsche as well. But there are other things as well, like other experiences, and this is a silly one, but how I approached paintball when I eventually went to go for a game was based on how I played Call of Duty at the time, as in, I lay in the grass, I hid like a coward, and hoped to score some easy kills. Paintballing really hurts, by the way. I don't know if you've done it, but it actually really hurts.
Do you remember the Fast Show?
No. Yes, I do remember the Fast Show.
Yeah.
I don't remember that sketch, yeah.
Oh, they had a sketch, and it was the idea was as soon as the guy turned his back, his pal shot him in the back of the head.
Yeah,
and he couldn't help doing it.
That's what happens, and you can't help doing it. Midnight Club LA, that's a driving game, obviously. That features a scaled-down version of LA, and speaking to people at the time in the community that played the game and knew LA, they said it was quite accurate, but it was scaled down. Distances were a lot shorter in the game than in real life. And on that note, even things like Grand Theft Auto, especially as soon as you get into number 3 and Vice City and beyond, they are, of course, parodies of real-world locations. So, guys, it doesn't have to be racing or shooting at things. Are there real-world places, activities, or experiences that you've also seen recreated in games, old or new, I don't care. And how did they compare for you?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know that's how I like things. I don't know if I want the real world. I want to go other places. I touched this with Ultima. I love going to new worlds, and I still do appreciate the accuracy of things like this. So I've probably put hundreds or even more hours into Football Manager over the years, and that sets out to try and recreate pretty much all of world football and the players and the teams and the leagues, and that does make it much more compelling because of that. So you can try and take Wraith Rovers up to win the Champions League. But one thing I'm jealous, though, is the Fallout series, because it recreates the real world change to fit into the game, but hundreds of years later after a nuclear war. So there's no Fallout of Glasgow at the moment. So maybe Fallout in the future will be Fallout Glasgow. I'm sure it won't be Fallout Glasgow. I mean, it would be nice to see the places that I know in Fallout, but changed. I don't think I want to explore the real world. I want it to be a new world, but that's what I want there. Although maybe I should mention, the oldest text adventure came from a cave, came from someone working out what the layout of a cave was and turning it into a text adventure, which eventually became the Colossal Cave and Zork and so on. So I guess that's an important callback to how these things started.
You've touched on what I like about it, Dave. If it's an area you know, but then obviously that's quite specific, therefore it makes it niche. But if you know it and you recognize it and you go, oh, I see what that's referencing, you know. So it would be nice to have, you know, Fallout in your area.
And I know that Mark on Discord from the Retro Collective, he's always flying over places and he's always complaining the cave isn't really on Microsoft Flight Simulator.
Right. Yeah. Things like that. And I'm kind of obsessed with recreating real world places in things like Duke Nukem and Unreal Tournament maps that I've made. And even when I went, you know, right further back than that, you know, messing about in 3D Construction Kit, it was always places I'd been to, like my school, and can I recreate that inside this system? But you know how much I love flight sims, right? Because of my love of flight sims from a very young age, I always wanted to fly the real thing, of course. So my wonderful wife, in the early days of our marriage, bought me one of those one-off lessons at Biggin Hill Air Base in Kent. And yes, I would say that playing flat shade polygon-based flight sims on my Amiga did help me understand the dynamics of the aircraft and how the primary controls worked and even how to navigate. None of that felt new. But my Amiga never recreated the motion. And hence, yes. Go on, Dave.
If you're on a plane, let's say you're flying home to England, and someone comes to the cabin and says, can anyone fly a plane? And you can stick your hand up.
Look, I know other people that are into flight sims that would say you're one of those people that go, I was born for this moment. Right. In all honesty, you know, I think the older you get, there's no way in hell that you would. Oh, look, people they've landed planes just with the help of the air traffic controller talking them through, right? You wouldn't want, doesn't matter how many hours you've logged in a simulator, you don't want to be that guy, right? You actually don't want to be that guy. And look, because this is what happened to me on my first real flight, I, of course, reached for the sick bag halfway through the 1 hour flight because of the motion, which the Amiga, for some reason, never simulated. Fast forward to the early 2000s when we moved to Australia and I was a bit older and I had at least been on some long-haul flights by this point. And again, over Jandakot Airport in Perth, where I got to do aerobatics with a lovely old ex-RAF guy called Roy, and he let me take the controls. And again, you know, my time in the simulators and Roy's instruction helped me pull off a roll and a 90-degree turn. That's when you flip it like, you know, the plane totally on its side and then just pull back on the stick. Fantastic stuff. And roll out on the correct heading. And I loved it. It is one of the best memories of my life, without a doubt. Roy then took over the controls again, did some more maneuvers, and we landed. It was a wonderfully smooth landing. And off at the first taxiway, and I exited the plane and said to Roy, I'll be back in a sec. And I found the nearest piece of grass on which to remind myself what I'd had for breakfast that morning, Dave.
So what was your call sign then? Was it Maverick or Top Gun, or was it Goose or Iceman?
Oh, no, yeah, look, unimaginatively, it was Maverick most of the time. And then I swapped to, what was his call sign in Iron Eagle? I can't remember what his
Pukey?
call sign was.
Was yours Pukey, maybe?
It should be. Look, if I ever did get a job as a pilot, my call sign would now be Pukey, 100%, or Upchuck or something. It's going to have to be. So much as I love the accuracy, I really do love when it's proved and shown that something in a game is accurate to the real world location it's meant to be modeled after. I think it's a massive feat. And the older the game, the better that feat. But no, the virtual worlds don't necessarily prepare you for the whole experience. Time now for Community Question of the Week. And the question from last week was, you're the producer of a new edutainment video, not from the Computers Literacy Project, about how to buy a computer. You have an unlimited budget and compare one mainstream celebrity with one retro tech celeb to host the video. Who are you hiring? So we are out of contest mode. Dave, who's at number one?
So the top answer from Rowan Forrest is LGR and Weird Al Yankovic. They're going to teach you how to buy a Pentium computer. Good answer.
It's quite
It's all about the Pentiums, baby. I love it. Jason?
I have no idea what I'm looking at here. Pajako 6502, a bit UK-centric, but Violet Berlin and Hannah Fry, I reckon they would know what they are talking about and would make quite light of what in this day and age, a quite dull subject of buying a computer. Should I know who either of these people are?
Violet Berlin, I mentioned in brief last week. She was one of the hosts on Bad Influence, a UK Saturday morning TV show about computers and gaming. So, yeah, the computer audience would know that. I don't know who Hannah Fry is, though.
Hannah Fry is a scientist type person, Professor Hannah Fry. She does lots of BBC stuff. She does a few BBC TV programs, a few radio shows as well. She's quite clever, quite engaging.
Jeff Mendoza says, "What? Oh, again, yes,
Fraud." Actually, I think he earned it this time.
Yeah, I think it did. So Liam Neeson and Mark Fix's stuff. I would like to see how long Liam Neeson can keep a straight face against the endless onslaught of puns and innuendo. Some of the replies from Jagger. Please make this one happen.
No, there's one that you want more to happen than this, Chris.
Yeah.
Call the activist.
Yes. Call the activist. For me, it would have to be Maria Whittaker and Chris from This Week in Retro, so we can finally meet her and talk to her about his love of Barbarian and Barbarian 2. Yes. No, probably not, because I'll lose my marriage and my house and everything. And I believe she's also happily married as well. So let's not upset those things. But yeah, fantastic. It'd be great to meet her.
So a new question for you next week. If you could take any real world location and put it into any game, what would it be and why? So tell us both the location, but also the game you'd want to roam in it. Answers go to go to reddit.com/r/thisweekinretro question of the week, which will be available right now. By the time you're watching this, it'll be up and ready for you. Thank you for joining us this week. Next week, we'll be back as usual. And we'll see you then.
Bye.
We're all waving.
I'm waving.
Jason's waving, Chris is waving, I'm waving too.
Farewell.
Bye.
This Week in Retro was written and presented by Chris from 005 The Gamer, Jason from the Retro Adventurers, and Dave. It was edited by me, Duncan Stiles. The podcast version of the show is available through your favourite podcast app, including Apple Podcast and Spotify. And the video version is available on the This Week in Retro YouTube channel.
Join our community subreddit at r/thisweekinretro to suggest and vote on the stories we cover on the show. Please give us a like and subscribe to help us reach new viewers.
If you enjoy our show and would like to support it, then please check out the link to our Patreon page in the show notes or description. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time for more up-to-date news for out-of-date tech.